Have you ever tried to have a simple conversation with your spouse and it totally gets derailed and turns into this big argument? Maybe one of you gets defensive, you're feeling frustrated, you said things that you didn't mean to say, whatever the case, it turns into something that you were not intending it to, and now you have a problem on your hands. If that sounds familiar, first of all, know that you're not alone. This can definitely happen to a lot of people. The good news is that there are things to help that not become the case for you. Today, I'm going to share 3 key strategies to help you communicate better, lower any defenses between the two of you, and actually feel heard, because that is very important when having conversations not turn into an argument. Hi, I'm Catherine, a licensed therapist and a virtual coach, and today I'm answering questions that were previously sent in by you. Before I jump in, please take a second, like this video, and subscribe so that you can make sure and catch the next video. By the end of today's video, you are going to have practical tools to set yourself up for success to be able to have conversations with your spouse without it turning into a fight. All right, here is the question that was sent in previously. How to have a conversation with my spouse without turning it into a fight. He feels like I'm out to get him. So this is from a wife's perspective. Let's talk about it. The first thing to understand is that when somebody feels attacked, their body a lot of times will go into fight or flight mode. So the brain is wired for survival, and if there's anything that feels like a threat or that triggers somebody, then their brain sends out these like mayday signals because it wants to protect you. So if something happens in a conversation that does not feel comfortable, that brain is sending off mayday signals, trying to protect you. I know this is kind of like caveman days, but it really is wired into how we communicate and relate to other people. So when that happens, the body then kind of goes into fight or flight to protect you. That's why in this case, the spouse, the husband, is saying that it feels like his wife is out to get him. He is probably feeling emotionally unsafe. Maybe some insecurities have come up, whatever it is, he's being put on the defense and he does not want to have whatever the conversation is. So what you want to do is make sure that you set the stage right before you even really enter into the conversation. And you do that by having what's called a softened startup. So you want to make sure that you are going into the conversation conveying that you're on the same team and that you really want to be able to talk about whatever it is without things getting out of hand. You want to do it in a calm way. So it really helps if you can start off things with reassurance. Hey babe, I really want to talk about this with you. I don't want it to become, a big deal, but I've been really concerned about this. Or like, hey, this really hurt my feelings earlier. Can we talk about it when you have a moment? Whatever it is to kind of help lower the defenses so that you know that your spouse is not going to feel like they have to attack or say something hurtful back. Whatever you know, because you know them best, that will help them stay calm, be able to hear you out, is really important when you start out a conversation. It's also really important to go into things with curiosity and clarifying versus having assumptions or accusing, because that will only create defensiveness in the person that's listening, and then the conversation is kind of derailed before you even get started. So instead of something like, we've literally talked about this before, you never listen to what I'm saying, what is the point of even trying to have a conversation with you? Instead of something like that, try approaching it like, hey, I really don't feel heard in this area. I feel like, I know we've talked about it before and something isn't really, sinking in for both of us because we're still having this conversation and I want to be able to get to the bottom of it for your sake, for my sake. What do you think we could do to alleviate this issue, to talk it out? I want to hear you out. I want you to hear me out. We've got to work on this. See how it's I'm in this with you, we're on the same team, but I'm trying to go into it with a mindset of clarifying and not assuming that you're the problem, and if you just, fix your stuff, then we'd be better. There's a very big difference in how the conversation is being started. The second thing is to really focus on, like I just said, how the conversation begins. The first 30 seconds of a conversation honestly predict the rest of the entire conversation. So if you can start off on a good footnote, if you can start on the right foot, then the rest of the conversation will be better, and chances are that you will both be able to hear each other out without it turning into a fight. A really helpful tool to keep in mind is using I statements. Now, I know that sometimes people roll their eyes oh, I've tried this and it doesn't work. It is a very powerful thing that takes practice. And sometimes we think we're saying it right, but we're really not. And so I just want to help you understand how this can work to alleviate things turning into a fight. So using I statements is really focusing on what you're feeling, the needs that you have, and not saying like you as like the problem, putting your spouse on the defense. So like, I really am struggling with this and really need some help in this area, or like, I've really been feeling blah, blah, blah. Do you think we can work on this together? Instead of like, you're literally not listening to me. You never help out. Like, those things are not helpful and do not provide a good conversation. You also really want to avoid absolutes. So avoid words like always, never, things like that, because honestly, it's probably not possible that they always do this or they never do this. When I hear couples talk and they're like, you always say that. It might feel like it, and so I'm not validating, or I'm not invalidating that it feels like they always say or do blah, blah, blah. But like, in reality, chances are they don't always do that thing. In your brain, it might feel like that, and that is like a whole other conversation of things that we would need to work on to help that mindset. Using I statements and avoiding absolute, so avoiding saying you always, you never, things like that. They bring your spouse into open conversation versus kind of like shutting it down at the start. So those are really important things to keep in mind when you want to make sure that your conversation doesn't turn into a fight. The third thing to keep in mind is to go into the conversation listening to really understand, not with the intention to win or prove your point or be right, because that's not really helpful for a conducive conversation. Something that you can keep in mind if you're like, I'm not really sure if I do this or not. If you find yourself interrupting, that is a huge signal that your brain has already moved on to what you're gonna say, to that response, and you're not actually giving your spouse time to be able to like finish their sentence and complete a thought, and you're just already ready for the next thing. So that also is very dismissive and frankly rude to your spouse. So it's really important to slow things down, and this takes practice, especially if you're like, well, I don't want to forget what I have to say. It's okay. You need to practice letting them finish their thought, finish what they're gonna say, and go into it with like, really the goal is listening to understand what they're trying to say, understand their point of view, the things that they're trying to bring to the table. All of that is really important. When we feel heard, we're more often to have lower defenses. If we feel like what we're trying to say is being ignored, dismissed, invalidated, and not heard, that's when the defenses go up, and that's where I totally see how, in this case, possibly, the husband is like, I'm on the attack, like, I'm not being heard. What's the point of having this conversation? She's out to get me, right? That is going to alleviate if you go into things trying to understand them. A really good way to help with this is to mirror what they're saying back. So it's a form of active listening. So it could sound like, okay, I feel like what you're trying to convey is blah, blah, blah. Or, okay, what you just said to me, I heard this. Is that what you're trying to say? Is that what you're trying to convey? And then give them a chance to respond. Like, yes, that's what I'm trying to say. Or no, not that. And then let them correct and kind of shift what they're trying to say so that you can really understand them. Also, when you're doing this is back to that second point. You're really leaning into clarifying versus assuming, and that's very helpful. Make sure too that even if you don't agree, even if you're confused, that you validate their feelings. This is huge. I see this trip up couples all the time. Even if you don't agree, even if honestly you think their point is literally crazy, they're still valid for their own perspective. So it's okay to disagree and still say, I really get that that's frustrating for you, or I can imagine how that would really annoy you. Those things convey, maybe I don't fully get it because I'm not in your shoes and my brain works a little bit differently, but what you're saying and the feelings that you're experiencing, they're valid and I care about that, and I'm not going to dismiss it even if it's not the same as my view. All of these things together work to help create a safer environment for a better conversation. And when people feel safe, whether that's really what they realize is happening, their defenses are lowered, they don't feel attacked, they feel like they can have this conversation without those alarm bells going off inside, and it just keeps everything a little bit more chill, a little bit more calm, so that no one feels attacked and you can have a conversation, not turn into a fight. So to sum it up, keep in mind that fight or flight mode that bodies can go into, that brains can go into. You want to keep the defenses lowered, go into a conversation trying to really listen, understand, clarify before assuming, go into it with curiosity, with your tone of voice being calm. How you set up that conversation really can set the tone for the rest of it. And let's be honest, we're gonna mess up. You're not gonna do it perfectly the first time, maybe the second time, especially because this is a practice thing. If you mess up, like, own up to it. Hey, I totally did not mean to start off the conversation like that. I'm sorry. Can we take a second and back up? And if they are already super mad, hot and heavy, they can't even hear you, it's okay to be like, let's just take a break. I want to have this conversation when we're both calm. I apologize. I own up to how that was not my intent, and I want to redo. Can we have a redo? That's okay. That's something that would be really a positive thing to have as a normal thing in your relationship, that you both give yourself grace and wiggle room to be human, to mess up, and then reroute. It's okay if you messed up. It's okay if you started the conversation not super great. Yes, we can start over. Yes, I want to hear you out. So keep all of that in mind. And if you need more support in this area to have conversations not turn into fights, or like I just alluded to, if something goes awry and you guys need help being able to reroute and also repair, because you're like, we did not reroute, it's a cluster, there's like 100 things piled on top, we've got to figure this out. Where the heck do we even start? The relationship renewal program is there to help all of those things. So this is my group coaching program where you get lifetime access to a whole library of video modules, a workbook that goes with it, and then weekly coaching in a group setting together where we talk about things from the videos that you guys have watched. We talk through things that happened week to week. Like if you had a really bad argument, we're going to talk about it. Were you able to apply things in the video? Did you get stuck? What worked well, what didn't? We're navigating issues that you're like, we've been stuck on this same thing for like 100 years and we are over it. Let's talk about it. Let's work through it, because healing is on the other side of working through and learning all of these tools together. Whether you're the person that sent in this question or you're like, I'm not that person, but I relate 100% to all of it, the relationship renewal program is exactly what you're going to need to be able to go from the initial learning how to understand yourself, attachment styles, learning each other better, how the brain works differently for a husband than a wife, how to take productive breaks, the different conflict styles that people get stuck in and how to reroute. All of those things are inside of this program. The link to sign up is in the description. The next group starts in March 2025, so there's a little bit less than 2 weeks to join. I would love to walk with you side by side for the month of March and April as we work through all of these things to have a strengthened, healthier relationship. Here's a little video I got permission to share from the 2024 group. It will give you a little sneak peek into the dynamic of our group calls.
Did module 4 separately because we didn't like talk about it yet, but I would say that module 4 was very enlightening. I feel like I realized that there were a lot of the behaviors that we both do that I was like, yep, that's me. Here, like the examples you're using, I was like, yep. And then I was picking out what Dylan was doing too. And we had a small tiff right before the call.
Okay.
Doing exactly what the video said not to do. So my bad.
We did the same thing, so.
Oh, good. Great. I was like, you see that over explaining? She just said not to do that. So you're being defensive.
Oh my gosh.
I was listening to the video, and like the first two were like some of the like more, I forget what the titles were, but more of like the outward, like the louder person. And I was like, Sarah, like she's two of the four, like what are the other two? And I was like, oh, the other two are me. That's
like
Okay, hopefully you feel more equipped on how to go into a conversation and have it be successful without it turning into a fight, without your significant other feeling attacked or put into defensive mode. If you found it helpful, please like this video. Remember to subscribe so that you are up to date on all the next videos that are coming out. And if you have any other follow-up questions or comments, put them in the comments so that I can help you out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.